The Rockwell B-1 Lancer bomber is a supersonic variable swept-wing long-range strategic bomber that the U.S. Air Force began to use at the end of the Cold War. It was developed by North American Airlines, later merged with Rockwell and acquired by Boeing in the 1970s, first flew in 1974, and served in 1985. Because B-1 is read as B0E, it is often called BO. B1b is a major modification. As of 2013, there are still at least 60 B1b aircrafts in service in the USAF, and it is also one of the major forces of the USAF's strategic deterrence. Because the B-52 bomber's high-altitude business sonic burst mode is difficult to survive in the face of new air defense systems, missiles and interceptors, and the new generation of advanced technology bombing with covert functions. The technology required by ATB cannot be developed in the short term. In order to maintain the integrity of the strategic iron triangle of the United States, land-based long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, long-range strategic bombers, the United States decided to develop a new generation of long-range strategic bombers with low-altitude penetration capabilities to fill this gap. In terms of the technical level at that time, high-altitude, high-speed penetration was not the best solution. The shooting down of U-2 reconnaissance aircraft in May 1960 made the U.S. Air Force begin to seriously explore the problem of low-altitude penetration. Then in 1961, the U.S. Air Force launched the Subsonic Bomber (SLAB) program. In 1965, the Advanced Manned Strategic Aircraft (AMSA) program was launched. The main task of AMSA is to survive the first attack of the enemy, successfully break through the enemy's defense, and accurately project weapons launched outside the defense area or free-fall weapons onto military or industrial targets, so as to effectively deter possible nuclear attacks by the enemy. Therefore, AMSA must have good survivability, penetration ability, and much better capability of large ammunition load and large range than B-52. In 1969, when the design was finalized, the U.S. Air Force issued the Project Requirements Specification, and AMSA was officially named B-1 Lancer. At the end of the 1970s, the U.S. Air Force had tested the B-1A prototype aircraft. The main operational mode of the B-1A was supersonic high-altitude penetration. However, due to the change of the U.S. Air Force strategy and the high-altitude penetration mode was not enough to cope with the powerful Soviet air defense fire network, the A-type was quickly dismounted. In the early 1980s, with the change of the international situation and the need to confront the Soviet Union in the Cold War, President Reagan of the United States decided to launch the B-1B plan, and the ill-fated Lancers welcomed the opportunity to rise from the dead. The B-1 has been put on the agenda again by the U.S. Air Force, but this time it is to develop the B-1B with low altitude and high-speed penetration to avoid radar hunting through low-altitude flight. On April 29, 1981, B-1 completed the last flight of the Bomber Penetration Assessment Program. On October 2, 1981, President Reagan announced that the United States would build 100 B-1B strategic bombers, and the initial operational capability would be formed in 1986. On the other hand, the B-52 with insufficient penetration capability will carry out the mission of launching cruise missiles outside the defense area. In December 1981, the Senate agreed to provide adequate funding for the B-1B project. According to the calculation of fiscal year 1981, the total funds of B-1B program reached $20.5 billion. On January 21, 1983, President Reagan announced that the first B-1B bomber squadron, the 337th Bomber Squadron of the 96th Test Wing, 96TW, would be deployed at Deas Base in Texas. After B-1B entered the base in June 1985, B-52H, originally stationed in the base, withdrew in stages. B-1B has 7 independent fuel tanks, 4 of which are inside the fuselage, 1 in the bearing box, and 1 in the wing, with a total volume of 112,835 liters. In addition, the barrel auxiliary fuel tanks can be mounted in the 3 bomb compartments. At the same time, there is a standard air refueling interface in front of the windshield. Like B-1A, B-1B has 3 bomb compartments, one of which is the rear fuselage behind the main landing gear compartment, next to the engine compartment. The other 2 are forward fuselage in front of the main landing gear compartment. Each of the 3 bomb compartments of B-1A is 5.49 m long and is designed to mount the ALCM Boeing AGM-86A. After the B1A project was terminated, Boeing began to develop the AGM-86B with an increased range, which is 6.32 m long. Therefore, the bomb compartment of B1B needs to be redesigned. In order to reduce the amount of modification, the rear bomb compartment of B1B maintains a length of 5.49 meters. The two front bomb compartments can be connected as a whole when AGM-86B is attached. At ordinary times, they are still separated into two bomb compartments by a partition. In theory, B1B can be installed with external weapon racks. A pair of dual racks can be installed outside each bomb compartment door. In addition, a pair of single racks can be installed outside the middle bomb compartment racks. A total of 14 strategic weapons can be attached externally, but the racks are rarely used. In the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty and Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, SALT/START, no more than 12 nuclear weapons can be attached. In addition, external weapons will greatly reduce the performance of the aircraft, so B1B does not use external racks in service. The U.S. Air Force ordered 100 B1Bs, for which Rockwell built a new plant in Palmdale. In general, the B1B project did not exceed the time limit or budget. The first B1B, 820001, was largely assembled by hand and used the parts prepared for the fifth B1A. On September 4, 1984, the aircraft went off the production line and made its first flight on October 18. The crew members were Rockwell test pilot M. L. Evanson, Lieutenant Colonel L. B. Schroden, Captain D. Hamilton, and Major S. A. Henry. The first flight lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes, and then landed at Edward Lay Air Force Base in California. The second aircraft was delivered on July 7, 1985. Only 8 months after the first flight, B-1B was announced to be ready for delivery to the Strategic Air Command, SAC. At first, B-1B was equipped with SAC. On September 1, 1991, the names of all SAC B-1B squadrons were simplified from the Super Bomber Squadron to the Wing, reflecting the fact that SAC squadrons were equipped with bombers and refueling aircraft at the same time. The names of all B-18 squadrons were also simplified from the Bombing Squadron to the Bombing Squadron. With the end of the Cold War, all U.S. Air Forces bombed. Since September 27, 1991, the aircraft has stopped its nuclear alarm mission. On August 1, 1992, SAC was disbanded, and the bomber forces were all handed over to Air Combat Command, ACC. ACC is the integration of SAC and TAC, which is responsible for operating all the most bombers of the U.S. Air Force in fighter planes, attack planes, reconnaissance aircraft, and combat rescue, aid aircraft, aerial refueling aircraft, and transport aircraft of the U.S. domestic base, which were assigned to the Air Mobility Command, AMC, because the urgent nuclear threat no longer exists. The Air Force's B-1B has embarked on a multi-phase Conventional Mission Upgrade Program, CMUP, to improve the B-1B's conventional mission and survivability. In the CMUP, all previous B-1B is defined as Block A for nuclear mission optimization. In the first phase of the project, Block B, improved synthetic aperture radar and improved IN/AL0161 ADAS system are introduced, which reduces the false alarm rate and improves the overall reliability of the system. The next stage is Block C, which endows B-1B with the ability to mount various cluster bombs, CBUs. 58-1B bomb modules have been modified with 10 bomb racks, which can mount 10 454 kg CBUs. One module can be installed in each bomb chamber. B-1B can also mount conventional air-launched cruise missiles, CLCM, after relocating the bomb chamber, but this violates the START II treaty. On December 16, 1998, B-1B participated in the war for the first time in Operation Desert Fox. Because Iraq refused to cooperate with the UN weapons inspectors, the United States sent an expeditionary force to retaliate against Iraq. Two B-1Bs from the 9th and 37th Squadrons of the 7th HAL Bombing Group took off from Oman along the Persian Gulf coast and bombed several targets in the Arkad barracks in northwest Iraq. The B-1B carried out 2 more missions the next day. In these tasks, each B-1B is equipped with 30,164 kilograms Mk-82 bombs. There are 28 bomb racks on the conventional weapon modules in the front and middle bomb compartments, and 20 bomb racks in the rear bomb compartments. During the Operation Allied Force of NATO bombing of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia during the Kosovo War, 5 b1bs, 4 from the 77th Squadron and 1 from the 37th Squadron, of the 28th AFB bombing coalition in Ellsworth, South Dakota were stopped at the British Air Force Base in Fairfort for support. These aircraft have completed the latest CMUP upgrade, installed Raytheon and /ALE-50 optical fiber tow jammer and decoy, and can also mount 24 JDM, but at that time JDM only allowed B2A ghost mount. The mission began on April 1, 1999. By May 17, the B1B fleet had carried out more than 80 combat missions, with a 100% dispatch rate. A typical mission lasted 7 to 8 hours, and each aircraft usually carried 84 Mk-82 bombs. After the 9/11 incident of Operation Enduring Freedom, the United States launched a military operation of lasting freedom against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. At the beginning of the war, 8 b1bs of the 28th Bombing Regiment went to Diego Garcia Island in the Indian Ocean as the 28th Air Expedition Regiment. In the middle of December 2001, B1B was transferred from Diego Garcia Island to Sumlet Air Force Base in Oman. During the 2 months from the beginning of the combat operation on October 7, 2001 to the U.S. occupation of Kandahar, the Taliban base, B-52H and B-1B carried out 10% of the U.S. military's air attack mission and released 11,500 weapons. In fact, B-1B mission sorties only accounted for 5% of the U.S. military aircraft sorties, but nearly 40% of the ammunition was delivered.